Well, my name's Valerie, and this is Damon. Did you get it working? Damon's filming it for me. Don't tell the manager. Okay. We're going to be doing a couple different techniques. First ones are going to be some ragging and using a sponge and then a color washing technique, and that's what we're going to do on these boards here. Over here, we're going to do some metallic techniques, and so those are going to be fun for some different areas in your home. We normally do neutral colors, but if you need help picking some brighter colors for your house, you can talk to me afterwards, and we can maybe help you pick out a few colors for your space. But the color we're using today for the glazing techniques is this swatch over here, and we have a bunch of swatches over here you can take a look at. But the color we're using is latte, and the reason we're using this color is because designers, this is like the most popular color that designers use because it's so neutral. And I think, isn't it the most popular color you guys sell too?
That's true by far.
Yeah, so neutral. And like when you're picking a color for your house, you want to think about not only your fabrics and things, but you want to think about your flooring and surfaces. And this swatch goes really well with the tumbled marble that you see a lot of times in newer homes. They've got, for tumbled marble, they have this. They also have the darker shade of this. And this whole swatch just goes really well when you have that on your flooring. This is their glaze that they have, and I think they had a coupon for this that he was showing you, but it's a clear glaze, and you want to help me? You can help mix it. It's clear. It's kind of got a white color to it when it's wet. You got it? Oh, I'll tell you while he's doing that. The color, when you're picking colors to do a faux finish, we usually pick the lighter colors on the swatch. And so this is the medium shade, it's the latte. To pick a glaze color, the easiest thing to do is pick a darker shade on the same swatch. And so the glaze color we're using is coconut husk on here. If you're using a different swatch, you do the same principles. This on it. So he's mixing the glaze. When you're mixing glaze, we normally use 1 part paint and 4 parts glaze. And so if you need a little more workability, you can add more glaze. Let me know if you have questions too.
Would you say 1 part what?
Yeah, 1 part paint and 4 parts glaze. I think they might be using 3 parts glaze for theirs, but we usually use 4 parts just to give it some more workability. Now, you want to make sure it's still there. Yeah?
Valerie, a lot of the homes here have textured walls. Is there anything we should know about the ratio between paint and glaze for that? Or
for the
they're not flat plaster or flat drywall, they're textured.
It's pretty much the same thing. The technique will be kind of the difference on if you're using texture. Like if yours is like a Monterey drag or something like that, the glaze is going to catch in those. It's going to kind of emphasize your texture. But depending on which technique you use, it may emphasize or it may kind of hide your texture. So we a lot of times use a smoother wall finish just because that makes your technique show up the most. And if you do want to try to do that at your house, you can just use joint compound. It's kind of laborsome doing this, but if you want to do a small area, it's not too bad. Just kind of skim your wall. You can sand it down afterwards. That'll really make your technique show up. Okay, the first technique we're going to do is a ragging technique. And the important thing to know about rags is you want it to be a cotton rag. It has to be clean. You can use your t-shirts if you want to, but just make sure that it's not real linty or, you know. They have boxes. I think you guys have boxes of cotton rags that you can use. That's the safest way to go because they're going to be a little more uniform and cotton will be different. So he's using a brush to brush on the glaze. This is the ragging technique, so he's brushing it on. Now he's using the rag, and basically he's making an impression impression into the glaze with the rag. So he has it kind of scrunched up in his hand, and that's what's going to leave the impression into the glaze.
You want to turn it so you don't always have the wet part. I don't want the dry part every time. So you just turn it as you go.
You're kind of twisting your wrist too. So bigger than what you normally do.
How big of an area do you do at one time?
Yeah, doing a board and a wall is like a whole nother story, but working in a surface about your kind of size of your arm width is probably good when you're doing a wall. Normally you want to start in a corner, usually the upper corner, and it's good to be working with a partner really, because it starts drying really quickly. And so you start in the corner, and you can either radiate outwards from the corner, or you can kind of work in columns, or just kind of snake your way up and down the wall. But the most important thing when you're doing it on a wall is to keep the edge wet. So if he had it brushed on, and let's say he was going to make a seam, he would leave the edge wet like before he ragged it off. So we can show you on one of these other boards, but you need the edge to not be the ragged off part so that you can come back and rag it off when you're starting the new seam. That's like the most important thing to keep from getting a lot of seams in your wall. But if you are going to have seams, sometimes if you're not able to go fast enough, you're going to get seams, and sometimes that's okay because it looks natural, like maybe it looks like a little bit like veins or something like that. But just make sure your lines, your areas that you're doing is kind of an organic shape and not a square, so you're not getting, yeah, so that'll make it look a lot better.
If you want it lighter, do you use more glaze or less paint?
Yeah, you can use more glaze to make it lighter, or if you don't want as much contrast, you can pick, like this is the latte, you could pick the next shade down, would be less contrast. This is going to be very high contrast, but it's on a light color. So. And then use the edge wet so you can show them.
Of those techniques you're going to do today, which is the best on the textured walls?
Our favorite is the ragging. That's like the most popular one. It looks the best. Okay, so let's pretend this is the area that he was doing and he wasn't able to work quickly enough to get this area. So start ragging off. And when he gets to this edge, he'll leave it wet and he won't rag it off.
This is
Yeah, I want to use it.
if you put it in your glaze and paint, you have more time to work. It doesn't dry as fast.
So you have to use a brush to put on
There's one.
before you don't want to roll it.
You can use a roller.
It doesn't give you the technique.
Yeah, you don't want to go too far ahead of yourself though, so that's why this is a smaller brush so you can work in a smaller area. You could use a roller, roll it on, just make sure you don't do the pot too big so that you can't go
Can't
and
get
drag
to
it
it.
off
No.
before it dries.
So, but if you did a small spot, it wouldn't matter.
No, yeah, you could use a roller, it might be easier. You sometimes use paint pads instead of brushes too. Yeah.
But what are some of the issues that people should be aware of to make it look nice? I mean, they're uniform and not splotchy. Are there any things that you should not do or at least be aware of, like too high contrast color, weird color combinations? I mean,
Yeah.
what should we be
The
aware of?
higher contrast you have, like, you know, back in the the 90s when people do a lot of the sponging techniques, they would use bright colors and it looked like salt and peppery.
Yeah.
Like, if you use colors that are closer in contrast, it's going to look less that way. It'll be a lot more easier to look at that way. But,
So this would just give you time to come back, as you left it wet, it would give you time to come back and go over the same spot. Just don't go back over any area that you've already done. And you sketch up with yourself again. Flat walls are a little bit harder to work with also because they kind of suck up the paint.
ooh, write this down, satin paint. Use satin paint for your base coat. Because the sheen of the base coat is really important. If you're using high gloss, it's going to just rub right off too easily. If you use flat, it's going to suck up the paint and you're not going to be able to work with it very much. Satin's like the perfect thing for